Good morning. We have Mr. Robert Shore, Senior VP Marketing, Infinera. Robert, would you talk about the trends, both global as well as in India?
Yeah, there's really three key areas where things are changing pretty substantially in telecommunications. Infinera particularly focuses on connectivity solutions, and as I said, there's three real key areas that are changing pretty dramatically. The first one is on the long haul and subsea. Really, long haul and subsea is all about high capacity, right? Getting more information over longer distances at a lower cost per bit. So there's quite a few technology innovations that are happening to enable that, right? To really drive down costs, particularly for these high capacity networks. The other big change is happening at the edge of the network. What we're seeing is more and more high bandwidth services at the edge of the network, and what this is doing is pushing high speed optical solutions all the way to the edge. So it used to be where 100 gig was only a core solution, and now we're seeing 100 gig and 200 gig go all the way to the very edge of the network. This is really opening up a lot of opportunities for people like Infinera that have all of our own in-house optical innovation solutions to come up with creative ideas on how to build high-speed optical solutions that are optimized for the edge of the network, right? Typically, high-speed optical solutions were optimized for the core, and there's really different traffic patterns at the edge of the network, right? Instead of a handful of large meshed interconnected sites, the edge is a lot more hub and spoke with thousands of endpoints, all aggregating on a few aggregation locations. The last and equally profound change that's happening in the network is the idea of disaggregation, these open and disaggregated networking solutions. And this applies both for transport solutions, so you're seeing things like open line systems and disaggregated transponders, or some people call them DCI or compact modular devices, where you see these small, discrete, application-specific devices that enable network operators not only to choose from a variety of different products, they're not locked into a single vendor, but it also dramatically increases innovation speeds, right? It enables people to iterate on innovations on each of those individual platforms much more quickly. So we're seeing a lot more interesting new types of solutions to address network challenges. So as I said, that's happening on optical with things like the disaggregated transponder and open line systems. And we're also just starting now to see this happen even in the IP space. Where we went from just a few vendors with these highly integrated, highly proprietary types of solutions, and now we're seeing the emergence of things like white box routers. And really kind of the way I look at that is routers today are kind of built like BlackBerry phones of the past, where everything is fully integrated, hardware, software, operating system, applications, all from a single vendor. And what we're seeing now is the emergence of routers that act more like Android phones, where you've got an open ecosystem of hardware suppliers, a common operating system, and then you can layer applications on top of it. And again, this not only drives down costs, but it also, like the Android phone, it really accelerates innovation with a lot more people able to play in the space and introduce their creative ideas for it, and really provide really more, significantly more dramatic efficiencies to networks, right? Letting network operators not only have a lower cost of the hardware, but be able to use this equipment in ways they never really thought possible in the past.
Robert, would you talk about the new Infinera? And the tagline says, empowering the infinite network. So what all infinite possibilities do you see now with the new Infinera coming into place?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So again, what's the key focus for Infinera? What we really want to do is essentially enable the idea of the ability to access bandwidth everywhere in the network, have that bandwidth be always available, so it's always there when you need it, and then you can activate that bandwidth instantly. So that's kind of the concept of the infinite network, right? Everywhere, always, instantly. And we've been doing that historically in the core of the network. So kind of the classic Infinera was really focused on high-speed optical solutions. And I think we really embody that concept of this everywhere, always, instantly, or at least the always instantly in the core of the network with something we call instant bandwidth, where the capacity is just there and you can turn it up instantly wherever you want. But it was really a core solution. Since then, about a year ago, Infinera acquired a company called Corient. Corient was much more focused on the metro and aggregation parts of the network. So what we've done is kind of combined the Corient focus, which was really traffic management, right, IP, Ethernet, that kind of stuff, and we've now integrated in some of the Infinera legacy capabilities of these high-speed creative optical solutions, and really essentially help push that concept of always and instantly all the way to the edge of the network, adding the everywhere part to it. So this is kind of the focus, right? Creative optical solutions at the edge of the network, things like something we call auto lambda, which lets you turn up services instantly at the edge of the network with no operational effort and virtually eliminates mistakes in the network. Right at the edge of the network, that's one of the biggest challenges. Yes, there's a challenge of operational effort to turn things up in lots of locations, but even more significant than the effort to turn it up is troubleshooting mistakes, right? And Auto Lambda not only reduces the effort to turn it up, but it eliminates mistakes of turning up higher speed solutions at the edge. And then we, about a year ago, released a product line we call the Disaggregated Router Series, or DRX, Disaggregated Router, which is our brand of a white box solution. It's kind of a carrier grade white box, so like our Android version of a router. And also we've taken our software that we've deployed on our router software that's deployed on about 300,000 routers across the world, and we've extracted that from our integrated hardware and enabled it to run on a white box environment. So essentially you have the kind of the core Infinera white box router and the DRX, which is a carrier grade, and then there's a whole ecosystem of other white box routers that will run our software as well. So you get this nice open ecosystem of hardware. You can pick and choose exactly what you want, driving down costs, and the router software runs as an application on the hardware, and the hardware really now becomes an open compute platform, not just a router, right? Like your Android phone, I keep pointing to my pocket because that's where my phone is. Your Android phone isn't just a phone, right? It's a calculator, it's a flashlight, it's a camera. And this is the idea of converting these white box routers not just into cheaper routers, but really these open compute platforms where the router is just an application that runs on it. And the whole idea is this, right? Particularly for a market like India, where really price is very price competitive, the cost per bit is super low. Network operators, they don't want or need solutions that are 10 or 20 or 30% cheaper. What they really need are solutions that are 10 times cheaper. And you don't get there by just doing what you've been doing more efficiently. You have to really change the entire way you operate the network, right? And this is where something like a disaggregated router can really help, where something like our Auto Lambda can really help. And just recently, a few weeks ago at a show in Ireland, we announced a really revolutionary edge optimized optical technology we call XR optics. And the idea with XR optics is essentially an optical transceiver that operates the same way a radio does in a radio network. So today, all optical transceivers are 1-for-1, right? If I put a 100 gig transceiver here, I need a corresponding 100 gig transceiver on the other end.
Okay.
That works great in DCI networks, it works great in core networks and metro core networks, but it's not good for access and aggregation where the traffic is lots of endpoints coming to a single aggregation location, right? You don't want a point-to-point optical solution. So XR optics is essentially a multi-point optical transceiver where one high-speed transceiver can aggregate the traffic from thousands of other lower speed transceivers, just like a radio network does. So these are the kind of things we're looking at doing to really change the game, right? Change the cost equation of building networks by orders of magnitude, not just percentages.
So from a initial focus of a telco, now you are moving towards enterprise. You are large enterprise. You are also moving towards data center players. So how are you positioned vis-a-vis other players in the market? Because this is a very competitive market.
Yeah. So a couple of the key things, like when you start dealing with the data center operators, there's two aspects. One, they're starting to build their own networks, both long-haul networks, metro core networks, campus networks, and even subsea networks, right? Google and Facebook are putting their own fibers in the sea. So we address them as a direct customer quite a bit also. But even more significantly is the impact they have on local network operators. Because Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they'll build data centers in the region, but they still need connectivity both to the network, to the end user, and even to enterprises. So one of our big focuses on helping network operators work with these ICPs, these internet content providers, these over-the-top content providers, to both connect to their network cost effectively, to integrate seamlessly, and then to connect to the end user, to enterprise customers, businesses that are looking to move their operations to the cloud, and really not only provide a cost-effective networking solution, but enabling network operators to offer differentiated services for business that are looking to become more operationally efficient. Here's a great example. Infinera, yes, we provide solutions, but we're also a customer. We have our own telecommunications requirements. So about 4 years ago, we moved our complete operations into the cloud, right? So what we did is we transferred a huge portion of our operational budget that we were spending to run our own internal data center, and we shrunk that budget down a bunch, But what we did is we moved that money, instead of running our own data center, to connectivity solutions.
Okay.
So this is a great opportunity for network operators to approach big enterprises and say, listen, you're spending this much on connectivity and this much on operating your own data center. We can drive your operating costs down to here by increasing your connectivity costs. So it's great for the enterprise, they lower their cost, but it's also great for the network operator because they can increase their connectivity revenue by a factor of 10 in some cases. That's what we did. We spend 10 times as much on connectivity, but we spend 1/10 as much as we did on the operations, and overall it saved us a huge amount of money. So this idea of helping data center operators push their solutions and services into the network, enable them to connect them to create, replication and mirroring, and then work with service providers to enable them to provide better services to end users and enterprises. Network operators make more money, enterprises save more money.
And how do you look at the Indian market?
So the Indian market,
because
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
how do you look at the Indian market? Because in another 2.5 months, we will be closing the year, and then it's 2020, and what we are seeing is 5G and IoT taking limelight in days to come.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, listen, the Indian market, I think everybody knows, is really challenging. There's huge price pressures on everything. The cost per bit is a fraction of what it is in other places in the country. But we look at that as a positive thing, because Infinera, one of our big focuses is on developing innovative solutions, right? Really different ways to do things. And when everything's working perfectly fine, people are less receptive to innovation, right? They don't want to rock the boat, as we say.
Mm-hmm.
But in a market like this, people have to do things differently. They have to be willing to think outside the box, which is perfect for us because that's the way we think about our solutions. So when we start looking at things like Auto Lambda, we start looking at things like XR optics, like a different way to do optics. We start looking at things like disaggregated routers to really fundamentally change the way you operate your network. These are really ideal for Indian network operators because it provides really a fundamentally different way to run a network that will really dramatically lower costs, and we're finding more and more people receptive to that. The more challenging the market is, the more receptive people are to outside the box, really innovative types of solutions. One thing I did want to mention, because you mentioned 5G. So obviously we're not a radio vendor, so we don't get into the really edge of it. We certainly have front haul type solutions. But where this really impacts things that we see it is the idea of this kind of concept of what they used to call mobile edge compute, now they call it multi-access edge compute. But the idea of pushing compute resources closer to the edge. We're helping that with a disaggregated router, which is essentially an open compute platform that runs router software, but you can host other applications. But what it does is it really changes the nature of what a metro and aggregation network need to do. It used to be where metro networks, all they needed to do was aggregate traffic and bring it back to the core. Right, that was it. I didn't need to know anything about it. I just need to aggregate it and send it back. Now, because applications can be distributed throughout the network, you need a more intelligent metro and aggregation network.
Okay.
Right? And this is necessitating more and more IP integration into the optical infrastructure, because you can't learn enough on IP, and you certainly can't learn enough on OTN. You really need to understand at the IP level. So you need an infrastructure that's IP enabled and application aware, and then you need to layer on top of that automation solutions that can help provide the connectivity to the application with an understanding of where it is, where it needs to go, what you're trying to connect to, what the prioritization levels are, and then adapt to network changes. Because those applications can actually move. You could be connected one place and then that application can move, and you need to learn how to adapt and reconnect it the other way. So I think these are some of the things that applications like 5G are causing. Just more bandwidth, you need to be more efficient, you need to be smarter, you need higher end optical solutions, and you need to be more creative in the way you build networks.
Thanks, Robert, for speaking to DG Analysis.
Sure.